5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're starting recording.
Okay.
Okay.
So
How's it
this
going?
is
Fine, thank you. And yourselves?
Good.
doing good.
So we have Mark on. Marc Sheffler. Is that correct?
That's as good as I've heard.
We have him on tonight. And Mark, what we usually do, we don't normally do last names. We've been trying to keep everything anonymous, but you have a name for yourself. You know, you're in the entertainment industry. You mind telling
That
us
is
a little
true.
bit about that?
Well, a lot of people know me from the first film I did, which was also Wes Craven's first film, Last House on the Left. For a variety of reasons that I've learned along the way, that film just keeps staying around. You know, every generation has its way with it, and because of that, you know, that coupled with a fairly long and reasonably successful career as a writer in television and some stand-up comedy that I do, I've been able to keep myself, you know, kind of relevant and kind of around, you know, not exactly a household word, but I'm not a household word in my own household, so who gives a shit, you know? So
Exactly.
yeah, but
Did you always pursue acting? Did you know that that's the field that you wanted to be in, or how did that
He's
come
a writer.
across?
well, but I started as an actor, so let me tell you, I don't have that typical story of, you know, somebody having a dream of going to Hollywood and, you know, selling everything they have and driving cross country or taking a bus. I have a much different story. I was an actor in New York, and one of the roles that I got was Last House on the Left. I just lucked into it. You know, I had a manager, and a manager sent me on an audition, and I said, go to this street and this building, and you'll see two guys. One's named Wes, and the other's name is Sean. And you'll read a scene and come on back here, and we'll talk about it. So I go there. I meet Wes and Sean, who of course was Wes Craven and Sean Cunningham, but just back then it was a guy named Wes and a guy named Sean. So I read the scene and got back to my manager's office, and by the time that had happened, they called and said, yeah, that's what we want. We want him. That's the guy we want. So I got in that movie. That movie, thanks to Roger Ebert, A Quirk of Luck, became very famous, and it became something much more than any of us ever thought it would. And that led to me doing a couple of commercials, meeting a commercial director in Los Angeles. You guys know that kind of famous Mean Joe Green Coca-Cola commercial with the little kid? And okay, so the guy who directed that, his name was N. Lee Lacy, and he was probably literally the coolest, smoothest guy I had ever met in my entire life. By that time in my life, young as I was, I had met a bunch of people because I'd done some stand-up and worked at the Copacabana and all of Catskill Mountain resorts and everything. So, but Lee was this kind of international character who had offices all over the world and had residences where he had offices, and never carried a suitcase. I traveled with him. He never carried a briefcase. That was it. They had clothes, always wore the same clothes. I mean, but he was a very, very cool guy. So after Last House came out, there's something to be said for a young, like a 21-year-old guy fascinated with women, who suddenly finds himself one of the 4 stars of a top 10 movie in the United States. There's something about that, right? Mm-hmm. So the publicity company sends me back to Pittsburgh, where I was born and raised and grew up, and they open the film at a big theater downtown, and several women from my high school graduating class, who a scant 3 years earlier wouldn't give me the time of day, suddenly were offering me a whole lot more than the time. And I remember saying to myself, you know, given my particular life goals, I think I've made an excellent career decision. You know, okay,
Yeah.
all right. So you know, this is the high of it, right? So Last House goes, you know, comes and goes. It's not like a major picture anyway. Even with the publicity that it got, it comes and goes very quickly. And I find myself kind of out on the street, as it were, like that, you know. And I couldn't talk about the movie, and it's gone. So I'm at a party one night, and I hear a guy who kind of looks a little bit like me talking to a beautiful model, and he's saying things to her like, yes, well, you know, I'm developing this concept, and I'm fleshing it out. I've got most of the characters drawn right now, and he's using all these words, and this girl is like hypnotized by this. So they end up leaving together, and I look at myself and I say, yeah, I could do that. I could tell girls I'm a writer, you know. So I went out and I bought a bunch of books. I learned about, you know, the mechanical words and everything. I started doing this, and it was working. I was, you know, I was acting, but I was like a writer, and it was working. So then I'm in an audition, tied back into Lee Lacey. I'm in an audition in his office, and I'm doing this little rap to some actress in the room, in the waiting room. And I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's Lee. And he said, hey, listen, I need to talk to you. And I said, what? And he said, I want to read that thing that you were telling that girl. I want to read that when you're finished. I have an agent in LA. I'd love to send it to him. So I said to him, look, Lee, man to man, or, you know, like young man to very cool man, something like that. I said, I'm not really writing anything. I just do that to impress women and to, you know, to get girls. That's it. And he said, is it working? I said, oh, yeah, all the time. And he said, well, you're an idiot then. He said, you need to be doing that for its real purpose, man. You need to be actually fucking writing something. So I ended up writing that thing that I was making up to that girl. I wrote it, gave it to him. He gave it, this is 1976. He gave it to his agent in Los Angeles. And bing, bang, boom, I get a phone call from him saying, hey, Stan Kamen at William Morris in Los Angeles just sold that to NBC. How would you like to move to Los Angeles? And I said, yeah, man. So when I said to you originally, I don't have like the typical story. The day I landed, the day I landed at LAX to relocate, I had an agent, I had a credit, national, real credit. I had an office, a car, an apartment, and money in the bank. And
you were single.
And I was single. Yeah. But being a single writer in Los Angeles is not, that's not really because in the hierarchy of the public, it's like a big deal, right? In the hierarchy of show business, it's the lowest rung of the creatives, right? It's like really, it really is. You can have a, you know, office with your name on it and a parking space with your name on it, a studio lot. You're a writer. It's great. You're doing it. You're having fun. Okay. There's if you have a minute, there's a very funny story about why writers become directors. It's like a joke story. So there's a writer. This is the reason why. So there's a writer who been kicking around town for years and sort of earned a living, sort of didn't earn a living. Suddenly, just sells a screenplay and makes like $5 million overnight. He's like, bang. So he goes out celebrating, and he meets a girl in a bar. And she's beautiful, and he tells her his story that, you know, he's been this and that, and then suddenly all of a sudden the success, and, you know, if you just want to celebrate for the night, that's okay, and we're good. So she invites him back to her place, and which is kind of overlooking the Sunset Strip off of like La Cienega, and it's just beautiful. And she said, listen, I'm gonna go into my room and change. Why don't you go to my little bar over there and make us a drink? So he goes, and he's making her drink, and he hears the door open, and she's coming out, and he sees her in a negligee, and it's the fantasy of fantasies for a regular guy. It's like she's beautiful and she's sweet and she's nice and she's perfect, and nothing needs to be done to her to make her the most perfect woman in the world. And as he's walking towards her in the hallway to connect with her, a director steps out of the bathroom and says, "That's okay, I'll take it from here." So that's why writers become directors.
Oh, that's good. So Darren, all this time when all this stuff started happening to you, you went from your hometown and then you moved to LA. Were you feeling overwhelmed at all, or relieved, or just?
I had been in the Catskill Mountains before. I ended up living in the city, and I had been part of somebody else's act and had done, maybe 150 club dates in and around that area, and then ended up working there, doing 2 weeks at the Copacabana. So I was kind of used, that thing where people get freaked out, which has been one of my saving graces. And let me go back in time, and I'll build you some foundation for that. I grew up with a single dad. My dad, for the most part, was single when he was raising me, and he was an aluminum siding salesman. So he's a very kind of out of the box character, always wearing sharp suits and driving big cars and shit, and eating in restaurants all the time. And he was just like Mr. out of the box parent, right? So around my 10th birthday, he said to me, all right, man, you're going to be 10, big 10. What do you want for your birthday? So I said, how about the Three Stooges? And he got them for me. He had a birthday party at a nightclub that they were doing on a Saturday afternoon. They were in Pittsburgh at the Holiday House. And my dad went to them and said, "Hey, I want to throw a party for my son. Tell me what you want." So they made a deal. I had about 60 people, my friends and their parents, of course, because nobody who could believe this, right? And they had the party. In the middle of their show, Mo stops the show and says to the audience, "Well, we're here to celebrate Mark's birthday. 10-year-old Mark. Where are you, Mark? Stand up and say hello to everyone." So I stand up and wave. And then Mo says to me, for some reason, "Come on up on stage with us, Mark." So according to my dad, I ran up on the stage, and I knew all of their stuff, like all of their bits. So I started interacting with them. And Mo was so surprised that he put his hand on my head and said, "I dub you the fourth stooge." And then there was this huge applause from the audience. And I couldn't see shit because I had stage lights in my eyes, and I'm 10 years old, so I'm not really used. But I felt this this embrace, right? This thing. I felt this thing, and while you're way too young to intellectualize it, that's the day I look back. That's the day when everything changed for me. When everything else in life that you could do as an adult was in a shadow, and being a comedian or being in the entertainment business or being an actor became downstage center. That was it. I aimed myself, in that direction from that day forth.
That was your catalyst.
Yeah, that was the thing. And I getting back to what you guys are, talking about men's health, mental health and shit. A lot of people, men in particular, since there's all this societal pressure on men, to be men. A lot of men who don't have moments like that spend a lot of years of their lives lost, and that loss breeds anger and resentment, and that breeds bad behavior. And I've with that in mind always, and knowing, it's like I've never taken any of this. I've had a lot of fun shit happen to me, and I've done a lot of shit, and I've never taken any of it for granted. I've never felt entitled to it. I've always been astounded by it. I look back, and I used to hang with Robin Williams and David Letterman and Leno, and just when I say hang, I mean have dinner and hang out and perform with and whatever. And I look back on that shit, And I say, all that really happened, and I never felt entitled to that. Even when I was there, I just felt like even astounded in the moment, because even when those guys weren't famous, there was always the sense that, you know, you're breathing some rarefied air, and that's been like the personal charm to myself about how my life turned out and how it is turning out.
So
yeah, I mean, it's very much, I mean, luck has a big part to do with it, but it's like when you get luck, you have to capitalize on it too. I mean,
Yeah,
you got
luck,
all these good breaks, but you had to move forward with them.
well, yeah, but that was part of the fun of it, you know.
Yeah.
Like that was part of the trip of it, was, you know, because I was a goof off. I dropped out of college after I went to college at LSU and in Baton Rouge. I went to college with David Duke, actually.
What was your major?
And my major, Southern girls.
Mm.
I'm I'm a one trick pony. That was it, you know. I mean, I left college. I dropped out of college in 1969. I had 3 life goals, right? That was it. 3 life goals. I wanted to sleep with as many women as possible. I wanted to smoke as much weed as possible. And I wanted to make just enough money to afford the weed and the women. So I look back now on what I thought was a trippy life at 19, and I have greatly exceeded my own expectations. You know, so, you know, that's it.
So, LA, you're in LA. You do the screenwriting. Was there
Mostly
any point
TV
where
writing. Mostly TV writing. Right. Yeah.
So you mentioned
You're good.
Chris,
You're
let
good,
me talk.
Nate. You go. You
Yeah,
go.
sure, please.
So, like you mentioned, Robin Williams earlier, and we all know what happened to him, unfortunately. When you were in the entertainment, entertainment industry, did you experience anything like that? Like, were you around other people who weren't very, you know,
well, Robin,
outspoken?
Weren't very what? Sorry.
Very outspoken about their mental health.
Well, you know, comedians will exploit their mental health for the sake of a joke. Most actors, I guess, kind of underplay it or use it in their work. It's Everybody has mental health issues. It's who's in charge when it happens that determines the outcome. You know, look, I'm 72 years old, man. I've had a very fun life, but there's still some shit I want to do. You know, I've got a series right now that my producing partner is out trying to attach a lead to. That's a 7 year. It's called Those 7 Years. It's a 7 year chunk of my life from when I was 14 until I was 21, and it's a story I want to tell. So, you know, I get up sometimes depressed and nervous and scared shitless that at 72 maybe I don't have the years left to do that, and that's a personal selfish thing, but it still leads to, you know, some sleepless nights every now and then I just, you know, like I said before, it's who's in charge. Well, I'm in charge, and, you know, I try to take care of myself, and what's going to be is going to be. And if I spend too much thinking about that time, I will not have fun, and having fun is like my main objective.
Yeah.
So,
And then it depends on what vices people go to too. I mean, if you abuse a downer too much and you know, you kind of go to that space and you don't have the proper way to channel it, that can take you down a dark path.
all of that stuff, I mean, except for the stuff that really knocks you out, like heroin and, you know, whatever, all the stuff that takes years to knock you out. You know, I hate to use this guy as an example because he's no example of good masculinity. But one night backstage at the Tonight Show, Cosby was on the show, and I used to write monologues for the Tonight Show. Whenever there was a certain guest host, I would always write the monologues. So Cosby used to like to hold court, right? You know, he's tall. Bill's a tall guy, and always very well dressed and always had that cigar. And so he was talking about one night he's at a party and somebody came up to him and said, "Hey, Bill, how'd you like some cocaine?" And Bill said, "Cocaine, huh? Well, what's that cocaine do for you?" And Bill says, and the guy says to Bill, he says, "Well, it amplifies your personality." And Bill says, "But what if you're an asshole?" You know, right? So that's what all that shit is. It, whoever you are, and all that stuff either makes you a better version or a worse version. And it's getting your shit together first, and then people are going to do what they do. But I've never seen any people who were really good people without any extraneous chemical refreshments suddenly partake in a chemical refreshment and turn into like the biggest asshole in the world. Usually you got to be an asshole first.
Yeah. And you know, the people dealing with demons before that, and you know, they dive into it, and then you know, it's just a vicious cycle. Like
it's horrible. You know, I've known people who are exactly that vicious cycle. They'll get really. I worked for somebody early on, really, really mean and vicious and vile, and then get so guilty about it that they go completely the other way, trying to make up for it. And then the trigger is always like this big, and boom, and there we go again. And it's this constant cycle.
That's isn't that what they teach women to look out for in an abusive relationship?
I think so. That those extreme behaviors, so
You get a lot of that in Hollywood, though, like a lot of those extreme personalities.
I always throw water on questions like that, only because, and I don't mean to, not for you personally, but
No, you're fine.
Like 90%, 90, even more of the people that I've met, famous and not famous, including lots of famous people, when it boils right down to it, they're just people who have a weird job that pays a lot of money. That's it. It's really it. It's not, Robin never changed. Most of the people I know who found like mega success never changed. Corbin Burnson, still an old pal of mine, was same guy was when I knew, we knew each other. Nothing's changed. Mark Summers, a lot of people I know who became very famous.
So you talked about how you're working on a project now from 14 to 21, but without giving spoilers or anything.
No, I can tell you. When I was 14, I went to watch a Jerry Lewis in Nutty Professor with my dad. At the end of the film, I was a huge Jerry Lewis fan, and I was already somewhat intrigued with entertainment and and the Three Stooges. And so now I'm 14, and I get up and I said to my dad, "Wow, it must be so much fun to be Jerry Lewis, to live in that world." And my dad said, "Well, maybe you're going to find out one day." I said, "Oh, come on, in the movies." And my dad looked at me, and it was like one of the most serious moments he ever had. He said, "Hey, somebody does it every day. Why not you? People, you're funny. Who knows? Don't say no to yourself. Why not you?" And I had no answer for him. So we made this promise. Like, I made this little deal with my dad that, okay, one of these days I'm going to star in a movie that's going to be at the Stanley. And we shook hands, and he said, "Yeah, and we'll ride together in a limo." Well, as luck would have it, 7 years later, Last House on the Left opened up in Pittsburgh at the Stanley, which was managed by my father's cousin. And we rode there in a limo together. So this show that I want to do is called Those 7 Years. And it starts on the day he makes the promise, and it ends on the day these two guys are riding and everything else is the journey in between on what gets the main character to that point and how it actually happens.
How much do you think your father's positive influence and behavior in general influenced you throughout your life?
Good question.
That's a great question, and I have an answer I think is equally equal to the task. My father is solely responsible for putting into me the theory that if I wanted something badly enough, I could get it, and there wasn't anything I couldn't do as long as I wanted it. He said, that's the big key. A lot of people think they want shit and they get on the road and then they really don't want to take the trip. You got to be sure that that's the road you want to be on. But if you want it, it's all yours, man. And he helped me, did what he could to get me on the right track. He allowed me to do things that, like I told you earlier, he was this out of the box guy, right? So my hobby is cooking, and it's always been cooking because I grew up eating in fancy restaurants. Yeah. So, and my youngest son, Max, is a huge, like a rock star private chef in Los Angeles, right? So yeah, he's CIA grad. He's just worked in a zillion Michelin starred places. So when I was 14 and a half, on my way to being 15, I told my dad I wanted to go away to Atlantic City and get a job on the boardwalk and just stay there for the summer. Why? Because a guy named Chucky Weiss told me there are a lot of loose girls in the summertime there. So that was I'm telling you, there's a theme to this, man. And I'm married, happily married. I adore my wife, but there's a theme to this. So my father said, yeah, but you need X amount of dollars. He's very smart. He said, you want to be there for 10 weeks on the, if you don't get a job, you need money. So he arranged for me, my friend David Levine, and I to go sell light bulbs and door to door and make enough money. And he said he'd match whatever we made. So I made 500. He ended up giving me 500. So I was going away with good cash in my pocket. I ended up getting a job as a short order cook because I knew how to cook, and this guy couldn't believe it. So I worked at Denny and Size Boardwalk Grill at St. James in the Boardwalk, and shit just happened, man. I was just on my own. I learned how to be on my own. My father gave me the opportunity he parented me in a way that gave me the opportunity to stand on my own 2 feet and to make decisions for myself. To not rely on other people to make decisions, and to not be afraid of making a bad decision because it's going to happen.
How involved was your mother in your upbringing?
Zero. My mother, we had a relationship, but it wasn't very good. Only until about a year and a half before she passed away did our relationship patch up. She was from a kind of a middle class but wealthy family. And she was the youngest, and she was, a brat, and shit happens. But I was very aligned with my father, and she didn't like that. So when I was 8 years old, I remember that's 1957. When I was 8 years old, I came home from school one day. I'm in the third grade or something, and the housekeeper says, "Your mother wants to talk to you." And I said, "What?" My mother looked at me, and all she said was, "Pack a bag, you're leaving." I said, "Where am I going?" I said, "Where am I going?" And she said, "Well, you're going to live with your father." I said, now? Am I having dinner first? Am I changing my clothes? No, he's on his way over here. And I said, "Well, what?" And I had a younger sister, and then I went to live with my dad, and he was staying with his parents. This all happened so fast. He was staying with his parents. He didn't have a place yet. There I was now with my grandparents, and it was very, very strange. 2 months later, my mother and her new husband, who was a surgeon, moved to Louisiana, to Baton Rouge, for him to set up practice. So she was then gone from my physical presence. So we never really had a relationship. Except we had intermittent versions of a relationship. And then cut to years later, my mother was very toxic, and she was the kind of person who would control people with money and gifts and material things.
Because that's a lifestyle she was used to.
That's what she was used to, right? Yeah. I know. I understand it, right? So, she wanted me, to forget my show business stuff and go to law school, which she would be happy to pay for, and do this. And no thanks. So that's the reason I bagged out in 1969. I was at LSU. I said, I can't fucking take this anymore. I'm not happy here. This is horse shit. So,
so that's why it was LSU, because your mother was living in Louisiana.
That's correct. Yeah. And I just said no. So cut to years later, she just pulled some of her nonsense when it came to my first wife and I getting some bedroom furniture for our new child that was on its way. And my mother was also a teller of tales. I have to keep giving you guys a foundation, because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound strange if I don't. So I remember that when my child was born, right? I did the delivery with the doctor in the room. I learned how to do it. I wanted my hands to be the first hands on my child. My daughter is born. My then wife we're in a hospital bed, and I'm with her and the baby, and it's just this moment, man. Either you guys have kids?
Oh God, amazing!
It's that moment. It's that moment, right? It's that fucking wow. It's all here, right?
It's euphoric.
So yeah, and you got to be like a parent to get what that moment is, So I'm in that moment, and the hospital phone rings, and it's my father, and he says congratulations, and all the right things. And he said, hey, look, have you talked to your mother? And I said, no, I haven't. Not lately. He said, well, I just got off the phone with her. Look, I know this is your big day. I've been there, but I got to tell you something. So he tells me something that she said, she said something to the effect. I remember I was a writer. I was, at a woman. I was married, and it just trying to get things together. My mother tells my father, you can't send Mark any money for this baby, because the baby will never see it. He'll just go and buy drugs with it. And my father said, what? And she repeated it. So he said, look, don't tell her that I told you. I said, well, Dad, you're the only person she probably said that to. And what is she going to do? Divorce you again? I'll handle it. I said, once is enough here. So he hangs up the phone. I call my mother up on the phone, and I said, look, I just got off the phone with my dad. And right away she says, don't take things out of context. Why don't you just put the smoking gun down on the table, okay? So I said, look, I really can't do this anymore. I have a child now, and whatever your reasons that you're the way you are, this is some toxic shit, and I just don't want to do it. So I'm done, and I'm not sticking my chin out anymore. It's stupid. I've been through therapy. I've been, I just don't want to do this. I look forward. I try to game it out, and I see nothing productive here for anybody.
Well, and if she was going to say that to you, why the fuck that day of all days?
Well, that's the thing that, people who are good at that pick their moments. They know the moments to pick. But here's the thing. Okay. It's not all like that. So I ended up not speaking to my mother for, I don't know, 35 years, something like that.
Wow.
Like no, because I know the cycle, and there's just no fucking way, right? It just wasn't going to work. And I wasn't trying to, be an asshole about it. I just knew the reality, and I'd rather fade the heat on the reality than go the other way. So then what happened was my mother fell. I got a call from my sister, who also didn't talk to her for similar but different reasons. And she said, I'm going to go to Baton Rouge and see her. I said, okay, my name comes up, wish her well, and hope she recovers. Then my sister called me back a day later when she was there, and she said she wants to talk to you. I said, okay, give her my number. So she said, well, here's her number. Call her anytime. Okay, I'm not going to stand on ceremony. So I waited a day or two. I told my wife, Patty, my current wife, who knew everything about the story. And I called her up, And the first thing she said to me was, "Can you come and see me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." She said, "Oh, I'll pay for it." I said, "No, see, can't do that. You want me to come and see you, you got to say I'm an adult. I can find my way there. You know, no need to offer. I'll come and see you on my own dime." So I did. I went to see her. We flew from LA to New Orleans, and I went to see her. And when I looked at her, she was, you know, obviously older and kind of injured, sitting in a wheelchair.
35 years had passed.
Wasn't the woman that I had left, right? So, but I kind of prepped myself for that. I'd seen pictures. My sister showed me pictures along the years. So, I just said mother. She turned around and she said, "Well, you're here." And now she turns away from me, turns to all these other old people sitting with her. And she said, "This is the son I told you, the big shot writer in Hollywood." And, you know, so we ended up having a wonderful few days. And during that time, she apologized to me for pretty much everything she ever did that was shitty. And she said, "Can you understand how I was 23 years old and you knew Grandpa, and you know I was this and I was that?" I said, "Yeah, no worries. I'm good. I'm fine." And she said, "Well, will you come back and see me?" I said, "Sure." And she said, "Well, I'll pay for it." I said, "No, you don't have to do that. You don't have to. I do okay. I've done okay." So I ended up going in the last year of her life to see her. I made 7 trips there. And, you know, if you want to use that often misused word of closure, I would say that, you know, while I missed all that time with her, I didn't miss time with the crazy person, but I enjoyed the time I had with the sane old woman who understood what she did and copped to it and didn't try to blame anybody else and didn't throw the shit off on anyone. She took full responsibility for it. And, you know, that was a moment. And we had a couple of other very weird, funny moments that I'm almost like I've written about, but I've never talked about. One night I was visiting her and in Baton Rouge, and I was in bed sleeping, and I heard, Mark, wake up, I need your help, wake up." Like a pop open, right? And, you know, okay, took a breath. I'm all right. I said, what is it? Did you fall? And she said, "Well, sort of." I said, "Where are you?" She said, "I'm in the bathroom." I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "I shit myself." Okay. So in that moment, it was like the universe saying to me, "Are you cool? Or are you not cool?" Because if you're cool, you stay. If you're not cool, you leave. You run out the fucking door and never come back. But if you cool, you go in there and you do it and you get it done.
Yeah.
So I had to go in there and, you know, clean her up. And no child should ever have to do that. And I know people do that. And my just massive respect for people. Like I was completely freaking out, man.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm a nurse by profession. I see it all the time. Dude, amazing people.
I am an immature, barely responsible 18-year-old in a 72-year-old man's body. And but I'm a decent guy. That's why I get around, you know. But I'm telling you, I did that. I told my wife about it. And she said, "No fucking way, you actually did that?" And I said, "Yeah, you know." And afterward, my mother said to me, she said, "You know, you're the only one of my 4 children who would have done it." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, your sister Janice, she would have gotten somebody to do it. She would have acted almost as quickly as you did. She would have called, one of the housekeepers and said, my mother did go and do it. And then I would have had to stay like soaking in my shit till that person got here. And then she mentioned one brother. She said he'd never even show up for me. And then she mentioned the other brother, and she says he's an idiot. He'd see what it was and like vomit. She said, so literally you're the only one. And I said, yeah, I don't know, but I'm here. I did it. So, and then after she passed away, I found myself thinking about that moment and saying, given that my relationship with her was never normal, ever, right? I'm going to just roll with the last year and change being what it should have been all along. And, grateful to the universe that I had that moment.
Yeah, because if she didn't have that fall and give you that reason to come visit her, you may never have gotten that moment with her.
No, and there were times in that year where she was okay, where she was moving around, and I'd come and visit, and we'd go out to dinner, and she'd make fun of my diet.
Oh yeah,
I'm a vegan, pretty much a vegan. I don't eat animal products. And I'd order something like that in a restaurant, and she's to the waiter and said, he's trying to live an extra 10 minutes, just shit like that, just smart ass shit like that. But she, it all worked out.
How was your relationship with your siblings?
I have a decent relation. My family's divided up into two parts. My father remarried and my mother remarried, and both had children. So,
but your father much later.
Much later, yeah. One brother from my mother's is kind of, like a sketchy person, so I stay away from him. The other one I speak with periodically is a decent guy. And my sister is my sister. And then on the other side of the family, I have another sister, younger sister, and then a brother who's in the middle age kind of group. I try to get along with everybody. I don't put up with nonsense. What?
Did your father ever express how happy he was that your mother made that decision to send you to him?
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing, as a single father myself, the second I was just putting myself in your dad's shoes, I'm like, I bet you he was the happiest guy on earth when he got that phone call.
He was, because he knew I wasn't happy. We had a very positive connection, like I have with my sons. I put the time in, and we went to a lot of baseball games. We ate in a lot of great restaurants. We had a great life, and then he got married, and he had that, and my life changed, which is part of the show I'm doing. How main character's life changes because of that. So but he gave me the gift of independence. He gave me the gift of me believing myself is my first option, right? It's like the thing I go to first. Like, I had no idea how to write anything when I got here as a writer, having sold the script. I had no idea. I had to learn on the job. But my father gave me the confidence. Like, I never, ever doubted myself. In fact, I always went in and I was very confident, So.
And when you had to make decisions, like when you were thinking on things, was he often someone you would call and talk to about it?
Not about creative things. Personal things, yeah, we talk about, but not about creative things. He used to come out and visit me and just fucking hang out and at the Comedy Store and the Improv, and like, he knew Robin Williams. I'll tell you a story. He knew Robin before Robin did Mork, and then after. So he knew him in the transition. So my dad had come out to visit. We're standing on Melrose Avenue outside of the Improv, and I look east, and I see on the next block, I see somebody looks like Robin coming this way. Sure enough, it's Robin, and he's got something rolled up under his arm. So he sees my dad and he's, oh, Mr. Sheffler, what news from the East do you bring? You know, some character. He just went right into his little Shakespeare thing, and made my dad laugh. And my dad says, "What do you got under your arm?" And it was People magazine. The first time Robin was ever on. So my father said, "Wow, brand new, huh?" I said, "Yes." Robin said, "I just picked it up just now." And my dad said, "I have to go get one." And Robin said to him, "No, take mine." And he pulled out a marker and he signed it to my dad and gave it to him. My brother Michael still has the magazine.
Oh
Oh
wow.
wow.
He still
So
has it.
I do have one more thing I want to ask you about. You were
Sure.
so you like the bachelor lifestyle.
I,
What
I
age
like
did you settle down?
35.
35.
Got
And
married. Got married for the first time at 35.
how long did that marriage last?
10 years.
How was the
And
divorce?
Was it
fine.
the job?
Pardon me?
Was it the
No,
job?
no, it was that my first wife realized that she was a lesbian.
Ah, that'll do it.
And yeah, and we're still great friends. We still, like, you know, uh, have a wonderful friendship relationship. She's friends with my wife. They live in Texas also, with her wife. And everybody's friends. I told you, I chill out, man. I don't let shit like that bother me. It's not worth it.
The pot helps
So
too, though.
it does, but I'm chill anyway. I start chill, so I only get more chill. So yeah, I try to, luckily it was a situation like that because it enabled us to co-parent our children rather effortlessly. We
Yeah.
didn't have a whole lot of shit. We always liked each other, right? All cared about each other, but sometimes there's an ulterior truth, and you got to deal with that. You just, it's sometimes you just got to know when to just say, okay, I get it. Wish you luck. Thank you. Let's just stay friends because we have mutual interests like these children, and that's exactly what we did.
And you have the daughter. You have a daughter,
I
right?
I do. I do. She's married and lives in Vegas because she always wanted to live in Vegas when she was a little kid, and she's apparently happy there. And my youngest, we have three. My youngest son is a chef in LA, and he does private events. And he brings fine dining into people's homes. Is what he does. He's not a
Nice.
caterer. Not a caterer.
So I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about your professional background, like
Sure.
for your writing and everything. Do you have like a favorite piece that you've ever done and that you can like look back on?
I think the thing that I love the most is the pilot script for this series that I'm trying to get done. I think it's my best work.
That's awesome.
A lot
You
of
know,
wisdom under your
Are you
belt
going to be
now.
acting in it?
I don't know. Maybe not. It's not anything I'm thinking about. I'm thinking more as a producer and a writer right now, and just trying to
You
do
don't think
do
you
what I
could?
can.
You don't think you could pull off your 14-year-old self right now?
No, I could like emote that for sure, right? But
Well, I was thinking as your dad. So I don't know if you're familiar with this movie called Honeybee with Shia LaBeouf. He plays his dad.
oh yeah,
Um,
I remember seeing ads for that.
Yeah, it was really great, greatly directed, and that's what I was thinking of. You could play your dad.
Yeah, except that nobody cares about me. I'm trying to get a seriously well-known actor to play the part of the dad. We have a casting list of about 8 people, and any one of them it'd be a thrill to work with and do it. So we're just gonna keep, kind of we just started that process yesterday.
Oh,
So
That's exciting.
we'll see. It is, yeah, it is. I'm experienced enough to know that I should just sit back and wait for something or nothing to happen because nothing I can do sitting in my house here has any effect on it. I've done everything I can.
This your first time producing something like this?
No. It's the first time I would be producing something so personal to me, but I produced stuff before. But this is something that I have every season kind of laid out already in my head and on notes. And while I don't have every episode crafted, I know what the stories are and I know what the narrative progression is. So it's not like no, please go ahead.
How would someone get involved like this? Like for me, like I have ideas like crazy. You can ask Chris. I'm constantly pitching ideas. How would someone get involved in something like this? Just connections, networking?
It's not just that. You got to think ahead now. You know, you have to anticipate what you're going to need. But if you wait till you need it, it might be too late. So you always have to anticipate what you might need. So what you would need to answer your question in the most favorable light is a writing sample, is something that shows, you know, what you can do. So in television, the way it usually works is you pick a show that you really like. And if you really like it, it sort of means you know the characters. And when I say know the characters, what I mean is you can hear their voices in your head. Because that's how you write characters. You don't take a step and say, I think I'll have them say this.
Mm-hmm.
You have them in your head and they say that. You gotta, so you pick a show that you really like. Then you search online and get a copy of a script from that show. And you read it and read it and read it and read it and read it until you become intimately familiar with that show's unique format. Because while scripts are always written pretty much in the same format, every show I've ever worked on has a tweak on that and it becomes their signature, right? They do this, whereas another company wouldn't do that, you know, just whatever it is. You just have to find that and figure it out what that is. And then you got to write a script for that show that looks exactly like that script that you're reading. No better, no worse. Exactly, right in the middle.
Have you ever heard that thing where there's really only like there's only like 7 stories?
Yeah, I don't know about that. That seems limiting. I think there are basic emotions that are always available in different forms in different stories, but I think, you know, stories are stories. They're all unique unless they're stupid, and then, you know.
Do you have a method? Like I've seen the circle method. Have you heard of that one?
No, sir, I haven't.
Like where you start in a circle, and the top of it is where your character is just living normal life or whatever. It's kind of like, you know, the beginning, the climax, and ending.
Like a narrative structure.
But there's 8 different points.
7. Well, actually, the way I learned it, because I taught screenwriting at Loyola Marymount University School of Film and Television for a few years. So what you're talking about is I don't know anything about the circle, but there's a screenplay structure, and there are 2 basic forms of screenplay structure. There's a 7-point structure and there's an 11-point structure. 7-point structure is the structure that's used for probably 90% of every film that's made, and it has to do with the normal life of the character, right? All right. The inciting incident, the end of the first act, the midpoint, the end of the second act, and then the end of the third act. Okay. Then the denouement, which is the getting the new normal, right? So the 4 points that exist in the other structure are mythic. It's mythic. It's called mythic structure, and it goes to early Joseph Campbell writings, when you have that whole concept of, you know, hero and mentor and the young guy who's got to learn shit. Like Star Wars is a great example. So the ones that come, the points that aren't in the 7-point structure that come ahead of that are call to action, right? Refusal of the call, meeting the mentor, accepting the mentor's aid, assistance, and teaching. So those are 4 points that happen, and then it goes right to the inciting incident that actually starts the movie off.
Yeah, I think it's a 7.1. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's 7.1 that I was thinking of.
Yeah, it could be 8 points. Somebody could have, split 2 points in half or come up with something else. But that's basic screenplay structure. So what I do is this. What I try to do is once, you know what a log line is?
No, sir.
Okay, log line is like a 1 or 2 sentence description of a movie or a TV series. But in that 1 or 2 sentence description, you kind of get the whole picture. All right. So think of it as like an atom, right? Because in those 2 sentences are like, 120 minutes of film or 90 minutes of film, right? In those 2 sentences. And so what I try to do is I think of a story that kind of tickles me. And then I see if I can log line it. If I can log line it and I'm happy with the log line, then I'll go to that 7-point structure and see if I can identify, if I can think of the story through enough, and I try to identify each one of those 7 points for this story. What would that be? What would that be like? And if I could do that, I'm a big believer in outlining shit. It's like, do you ever hear that thing called writer's block?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's never happened to me.
Very lucky.
No, not lucky. No. Am lucky, but not in this case, because I learned a long time ago. Don't try to write before you think. Too many people think that they can think and write at the same time. That's bullshit. Okay, there's too much going into how it looks on the page and words. You got to do your thinking before you get to the computer. So what I taught myself to do was to think things through so thoroughly and make notes in a notepad that by the time I got to typing, I was not going to ever stare at a blank screen. I was going to, whatever I put down, I'll fix, but you can't fix something and rewrite something if you don't write it first.
The narrative was already written out for you.
Yeah. So I still do this. I still walk around like my wife knows when I'm writing, like when we'll be somewhere and she talks to me and I either answer as somebody else or I don't answer at all, or I'm often, and she knows that, I'm thinking about something, that I'm writing, that I'm, so I have all these notebooks around here, these spiral notebooks, and I just make notes on something until I don't want to make notes on it anymore. And then I see if I can find those points. And then if I, if in a TV show, like in a pilot, I would need different parameters, but I need to identify those places and know that I have them. And then I proceed, incrementally. But once I get past where I have that and I have good characters, then I said, fuck it, I take a shot, I'll write it, see what happens.
Well, that sounds good. Well, Mr. Mark, I think we got off the subject about mental health.
No, you're good. It's okay.
So, but I appreciate all the knowledge. I've been trying to write film for almost 5 years now, and I think I got about 3 sentences just because, like I said,
trying to write before you're not thinking before you're writing.
Well, I have ADHD. I pitch about 3 new ideas to Chris a day, so it's just hard to keep up with everything that goes on.
Keep up. You haven't decided to do it yet. Pick one idea that you like and just think about, use all that energy that you have to expand that.
That's what the podcast. That's what this podcast is.
But that's what would be my advice to you.
Well, I appreciate it. And on that note, Mr. Mark, I appreciate you being on this podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. I wish you guys the best luck. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Nate, what do we say?
Oh, no! We didn't say it.
You didn't say it because you rushed him off.
I forgot. We got off the subject. Well, we're still recording.
Well, guys, he fucked it up.
Oh, first one. Oh man. Well, Chris, I can still say to you, I love you, man.
I love you, but I'm fucking pissed at you.
It's the first one. Oh, it's bound to happen. It's bound to happen.
I can't believe you.
All right. I'm going to record so I can go cuss myself out or stop recording.